All right, LIV Golf faces yet another major crossroads with now 3 big legendary names set to potentially be leaving the league this year. And it has even bigger, wider implications because what the league ends up deciding to do with these individuals could have a huge effect on their status with the potential for official world golf rankings. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about who those guys are, why they may be leaving the league, talk about what really this effect has versus what we've seen in prior years with names like Bubba Watson, who was technically relegated out, but picked himself back into the league as a business case. Can that even be something that they can do anymore? So there's a lot to look at here. And like I said, this is far more than just a couple of guys leaving. This really is a crossroads and a decision point for LIV to decide what they want to do as far as prioritizing competitiveness and official world golf rankings. So a lot to look at here. First, of course, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titus. Guys, if you haven't tried the new T-Series irons, make it a point to get out there and get fit and give these a try. We recently got fit ourselves, and it is incredible what they've done with the new lineup, the T100, T150, T250 now, and T350, and they are so excellent in a blended set. I've got a blended set myself, and I can just tell you the way that these now work together is just incredible. Plus, now in Titus Fittings, they've got brand new fitting tools that allow the fitters to really get you dialed. It's something you have to see to really experience and understand just how much of a change that this can make for your game. But I'll tell you what, the new T-Series irons have been performing amazing for me. I love having them in the bag, and that blended set is something that I just could not have ever understood and done without being under the guidance of a great fitter. So go to the Titus website. You could schedule your fitting right from there. It is the best way to get familiar with the new lineup and to try them for yourselves. And trust me, once you've tried them, there's just no going back. They are that good. So, Mike, what we're talking about here is the big headline. You've got Lee Westwood, Henrik Stenson, and Ian Poulter all right on the line of potentially being relegated out of the league. And adding further complication to this, they're all on the same team. They make up 3/4 of the Majestics.
Exactly right.
So we could see a massive change here. So what I want to do is I want to talk about and kind of bring everyone up to speed of what exactly this means. You know, if you're not following it too closely, what it means with relegation, what the different zones are, and where this can kind of move people around. And then talk about how this has changed specifically over the last few months as it relates to official world golf rankings.
Yeah, it's solid because, A, I love it. I want you to talk about how that works, the relegation, because you're right. It happened to Bubba. Bubba was essentially like gone from the league. They got rid of him, right? But they kept him on as a captain for business purposes because you don't want to get rid of the face of the team, of the range goats and all that. So now they brought him back and he's had a great year. He's playing well. So what is it and how do these guys make it back?
Yeah. So let's first look at this holistically. So when you look at LIV, you've got 3 zones. This is based on your performance in the season. First, you've got the lock zone. This is the players in the top 24. All those guys are exactly as it's described. They're locked. Those are the guys that are going to be they're going to be in the league next year. They're going to be on the same teams. No movement. They're locked. Looking further down, you now have the open zone, which is players 25 through 48. These are the guys who are exactly that. They're open. It's a potential for the team can either trade them at that point. They are not locked in. They don't really have a say, so to speak, in what might their future be. They can, if a team decides, they can trade them, and they can even be relegated out of the league. Right? Okay. Then you have the drop zone. This is where any of those players who are 49 or below, they are relegated out of the league. Now, this is not something that is particularly new. We had these before, the open zone, the drop zone. But in the past, there were some loopholes that if you were relegated out, you could still kind of make your way back in. And this is what has caused a lot of strife with the official world golf rankings. Now, if you remember, this has been a long and kind of volatile past going back and forth with LIV and the official world golf rankings. We've done extensive, podcasts just kind of diving into that. So I won't get into all the specifics here, but the idea being that and kind of paraphrasing and summing it up, the head of the official world golf rankings, they were basically saying, listen, it's nothing specifically against LIV. We just can't equitably rank them. And one of the things that they were specifically saying was one of the problems was it being too much of a kind of a closed system, as they call it, meaning that players were not there was no clear pathway for players to get into or out of the league based on merit of performance. Any other of the leagues that are ranked by official World Golf Rankings, you have things like Q schools. Yep. You have things like, again, X amount of tour cards. You lose your card based on your performance. And while as on the surface, LIV had some of that, and they've implemented more of that, if they were not to take this drop zone and this relegation serious enough, as indicated, we'll talk about with guys like Martin Keimer, Bubba Watson, what happened with them, it sends a signal to the official World Golf Rankings that it's not quite as competitive, so to speak, as the other leagues that they're ranking. So, taking a broader picture of that, looking at these three individuals specifically, you've got Lee Westwood. He's currently ranked 47th. So the very bottom of the open zone. He's still technically not quite in that drop zone, but he's only 2 slots above it. Then you have Henrik Stenson, number 48. He's, again, right on that bubble line of being just barely in the open zone. So here's 2 guys who may, retain their positions, especially when you think of a guy like Stenson, who's the captain of the team. But the one who is in the most, kind of hot water right now is Ian Poulter. He's 52. He is squarely in the drop zone. He's just not had a very good year at all, obviously, on LIV. And there's not a lot of time left in the season for him to make the waves that he would need to do to even move up into the open zone. So we're living in a world where absolutely you could see a name who was one of the big, I would call him definitely one of the big names who when LIV was first announcing and starting to poach players from the PGA Tour, he was one of them. I'm going to get into in a second. I'm going to talk about what kind of money he made from LIV, what his signing bonus looked like, but he was one of the guys who required a signing bonus to make that jump. Now he could be out. So it's kind of rewinding for a second and talking about where this has happened to some others. Back in 2023, we had a similar kind of headline grabber with a big name potentially leaving the league. It was Martin Keimer. He was in that drop zone. He was set to be relegated out. However, at that time, there was a rule in place with LIV that captains could not be relegated out of the league. Martin Keimer, being a captain at the time, was saved by the bell in that way because he was a captain. Here, though, we had the first major rule change. As LIV has continued to pursue official World Golf Rankings, remember, we've also had the change with Scott O'Neill coming in and replacing Greg Norman. And we go back to the time when Greg Norman made what was at the time kind of an unpopular decision amongst the players to withdraw the application for official World Golf Rankings, saying basically he was kind of trying to put their feet to the fire and show that like these guys are not willing to play ball, so we're out. But a lot of players who at the beginning were promised when they entered the league that they would get official World Golf Rankings and they would continue to pursue it, were in a way there were some who spoke out that they were put off by the fact that they're no longer trying to do that. But now we've seen you've got changes at the top with the official World Golf Rankings. You now have Immelman, who is heading that up. And you see with the change in leadership, both in LIV and at the official World Golf Rankings, we're seeing talks happen again. We've reported extensively on this. But one big thing was that in just last year, in 2024, a rule change was made in LIV where that captains could no longer be saved from relegation just on the fact of them being a captain. That rule was kind of reversed there.
Let me ask you this, though. If they do get World Golf Rankings, is it really matter at this point? Are they so far behind? It's not like they're going to retroactively give Bryson his points back for all these years. If Bryson dropped down to, I don't know where he is, but let's say he's, past 100. We know he's probably top 5 in the world, top 10, right? So he's saying to himself, like, I'm never going to get back up there. It's going to take me, well, maybe he can. Maybe he can.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's better to at least start accruing those points again, because official World Golf Rankings, even though LIV has introduced pathways into majors, And that holds a lot of weight of why these guys want official World Golf Rankings. But we've got the Ryder Cup, on the cusp here, where these guys are going to want to at least start to work their way back in the right direction. Sure. I definitely think that there is a case to be made that official World Golf Rankings, there's no reason to give up on them. Plus, you got to look, and we've reported on this, like the long-term sustainability of the league. I know we're thinking about guys right now, current guys, Bryson, etc. But as this league, and we're gonna talk more about it, like relegation, as these leagues starts to lose some of these names, which one thing I know a lot of people are probably thinking right off the bat is we're talking about guys who are at the end of their career, older guys, sure. Right? The league can't sustain itself forever on these legacy names. Right. They need some new blood in there. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're going to attract new blood nearly as well without official World Golf Rankings, with guys who are going to have to heavily, heavily rely on captain's picks to be on Ryder Cup teams. Mm-hmm. I think that the league, for long-term sustainability, needs official World Golf Rankings, and that's why I think that they are going to hold true to these new systems in place.
I just don't know how. I mean, maybe it's a scientific method or calculation, but I just don't see how a player in a field of 48 over 3 days wins an event versus a guy in a field of 120 over 4 days wins an event, gets the same. You know what I mean?
Well, it wouldn't be the same.
Right. So it would have to be some type of magic calculation.
Exactly. And then this is what's been said by the official World Golf Rankings before. They said that the math problem can be solved. The math is not a problem. It might just be that the top 10 on LIV are getting a point versus, whatever it may be. Right. But what they're saying is the optics and the overall equitability, as they keep coming back to, is just not substantial enough so long as you have this kind of closed system.
I agree with that.
Where guys are not being, based on merit being dropped from the league, but that's what's all set.
But LIV is not as exciting as it used to be 3 years ago. The signing bonuses are gone. The hope for World Golf Rankings out of the gate was gone. Like that, you said, that's why I agree. I think that until that comes back and maybe some more bonus money, I don't see them getting any more talent, any new talent,
right?
Well, any bigger names, any.
Exactly. And until they get some of these other names out, they don't have room for talent because it's such a small league. But getting back to it, Bubba Watson, then you have the case last year, 2024, he's relegated out.
Yep.
He, though, as the captain, picks himself to come back into the league. And at that point, what they used was this business case. You could have a business case to be back in the league. So here, again, interestingly, you no longer have the rule where captains can't be relegated. So he was relegated. However, the loophole became that you effectively could pick yourself as a captain and bring yourself back in the league. That is another loophole that is going to be quickly tightened up. It is, however, worth mentioning that Bubba, for as much as it may seem like a decision of selfishness, for lack of a better word, to pick yourself and put yourself back in the league, it ended up being a pretty wise decision because, talk about your ultimate bounce backs, Bubba is he's 15th in the rankings this year. He has 3 top 10 finishes on LIV. So he backed up his pick.
Sure.
That absolutely. I will say. But again, keep coming back to this, the optics and what it looks like to say, yeah, you're out, but you're not really because you just pick yourself, or your captain is your buddy and he'll just pick you to come back into the league.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of been gone.
But with the Majestics, Westwood, Poulter, and Stenson are all co-captains. So can they all just come back?
But that's what I'm saying.
Like if they don't tighten up that rule.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why this rule is being so tightened up. So
got it.
Here recently, this is where we had the big change. It was reported on recently by Flushing It Golf. What they said was that LIV Golf have officially reapplied to be included in the official World Golf Ranking system. They will need to make significant changes, in particular to the pathway system, and they will be doing so. All players will be open to relegation if they finish in the drop zone from the end of this season going forwards, and the only way to rejoin the league will be via the promotions event or the international series rankings on the Asian tour.
Wow.
So what we're doing is effectively eliminating that additional loophole, like what Bubba had, where a captain can then, even though someone's been relegated out, pick them to be on their team, whether that be for this broad-termed business case or for whatever other reason. So effectively, even these big names, the guys who took big signing bonuses, like the one we'll talk about in a second for Ian Poulter, they are out unless they earn their way back in. And the hope for LIV is that this makes a little bit more of a case to the official World Golf Rankings that this is a far more open league, and guys are in or out based on their
That's
performance.
interesting. Yeah.
So it basically puts an official end to that captaincy immunity.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes like, what does this mean like going forward for the Majestics, and what will really happen? Like we know that this is what's being said on paper, but this being the first season with it fully implemented, will it be carried out in that way? And what do you see a guy like Ian Poulter doing? And what could the look of a team like the Majestics, which, you effectively have 3 out of 4 guys on the chopping block, what could that look like?
Yeah, that's wild to think about. I mean, I got to assume all 3 guys are financially well off. I mean, at this point, they can hang it up and be fine. But I'm thinking about all the behind the scenes, like the Majestics, Poulter, those guys were like starting to work like some apparel deals, and there was a lot going on with the team. Now, if the 3 of them just leave, and they bring in 3 new faces, like what happens to all that?
It's a great point.
It's crazy.
Because at the end of the day, and something we've talked extensively about here as well, is that the PIF has committed, and we talked about this in a recent episode, a lot more money going forward to it, but the long-term sustainability is still for the teams to power themselves.
Yeah.
And that means them making their own deals with brands, etc. And I think brands really want to see, household names. They want to see teams that have some consistency and not turn over year over year. So building on some of that, it's going to be very important. One more thing here, I also want to mention another case in point was Brandon Grace. He was also relegated out of the league a couple years back. He was re-signed by his team. He's now moved back up into number 35. So he's not quite in that lock zone, but he's in the open zone, which does prove that some of these guys can turn it around, which I want to kind of put a pin in, because I also think that there's got to be a way that your guy can have just one bad season and be gone forever with nowhere to go because they're banned from the PGA Tour. So to a certain extent, I do think that I agree with the fact that in order to make this much more competitive in the eyes of the official World Golf Rankings, you do need to have ways that if the guy's a poor performer, they don't just hang on and collect the checks and they got to be out. But how does it have where you can also have a bad season? Because we even see guys on the PGA Tour, they have a bad season.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they still have some pathways to stay in competition. So I think that's a really important one to look at.
And there are guys who got relegated out and we never saw them again, right? Pat Perez. I think Perez came back on as like a announcer or something, or on the ground to analyst. Like I think LIV kept him on the payroll somehow. Yeah. But just not as a player.
Right. And so that's the thing. It's got to be a little bit more cohesive. So let's do a break there. Let's do a quick word from our sponsor. And then I want to come back and I want to specifically talk about these 3 guys, where they might end up.
All right. Obviously, the golf season is in full swing, and FJoy has you covered with the latest performance footwear and apparel. They have everything you need. I'm saying shoes like the new Premier Series, the Hyperflex, and even the Quantums to all the layers for whatever weather conditions you're faced with on the course. The Thermo Series for the cool weather, Tempo Series where it's a little warmer, and the Hydro Series for those places where it's just really wet. So not to mention new gloves, accessories like socks, belts, headwear, and more. FJoy is obsessed with golf, just like all of us, and they have been for over 100 years, guys. So trust your golf gear to these guys. Trust your game from the latest from FJoy, everything. Go check it out. You'll have a field day on their website. I promise you that. Go to FJoy.com.
All right, so we made the case of why now LIV has to take this relegation so much more seriously in order to pursue, if that is what they want to do, which it seems very clear that they do, get those official World Golf Rankings points. So with that said, what's going to happen here? What are we looking at? So let's first look at the team. You've got the Majestics. You got Henrik Stenson, Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, and Sam Horsfield. The only one who is not quite right on that bubble line, but still not far off from it, is Sam Horsfield. He's number 39 in the open zone. So the
whole team's about to get relegated.
I mean, that's at the end of the day, right? Yeah. Like it's a tough season for the entire team. But with just a little bit of golf left to play, you got to be thinking that it's very, very easy based on performance for Lee Westwood and Henrik Stenson, based on their position, to slide also into that drop zone, which means that it could be more than one of these big names, up to even 3 of the big names, who are going to potentially getting relegated out. So their only pathway, let's first talk there. Let's say let's take Ian Poulter. He's the clearest case because he is right now in the drop zone and he would need some stellar performance to move up out of that.
Yep.
he would then either have to play really well in what's basically it's LIV's version of a Q school, which is their promotions event, which he has the option to do. He can go and play in that and try to win his way back into LIV, which there'll be only a few spots. There's not a lot of spots there. Or based on his performance in the international series rankings, which there is an agreement with for LIV and the Asian Tour, but he's not grinding it out right now on the Asian Tour to get points, right?
Right.
So it begs the question to me that a guy like Ian Poulter, who is not the captain of the team, Henrik Stenson is the captain.
Well, they're co-captains. Does that matter? Are they all the same? That's what I was confused.
Well, I mean, right now, Henrik Stenson has him listed as the captain.
He is the main. All right.
If we're wrong, correct me in the comments.
Let us know about that.
If you go to their website, he's named as the captain.
Okay.
But I look at this and I think, well, I just don't see a world where Poulter decides that he wants to take on that grind.
Right.
Right. So interestingly, I did some kind of looking at what he's earned so far. When Poulter first signed with LIV, it was an undisclosed amount, but basically across the board, all the reporting on it agreed that his signing bonus in 2022 was somewhere between $20 and $30 million. That was what was required for Poulter as a signing bonus to come to LIV. Since then, in 47 events, Poulter has made $10.3 million. So if you combine that, he's somewhere in the $30 to $45 million made
over a few years
since 2022, over about 3 years.
Yeah, okay.
He's made that. You look back to his prior career, it's about, since 2004 to 2022, which is a little like 15 or so years, he made $27.7 million on the PGA Tour, which this is what was part of that, uproar in the beginning was like how much money, especially when like you said, the signing bonuses have quieted down. But when they were first coming out to try to, and which is, you can make the argument that LIV needed to do because you weren't going to take these names without some sort of massive incentive. But you do look at it and you think, wow, Poulter's made more money on LIV in 3 years than his entire PGA Tour career prior to that.
Yeah, that's happened to a lot of guys.
But the way I look at it, Poulter's now 49 years old. He's now combined between all of this. He's made somewhere around, let's say it's $50 million in his career in just earnings. That doesn't count sponsorships. Yep. I mean, anybody who watches his social media page and sees his Ferrari collection knows that Poulter has done well for himself.
Sure.
So to me, it makes it seem like the most obvious decision is for him to, if he's relegated out, just take it as a retirement.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I look at him and you say, is he at 49 years old? Maybe he gives it one go in the promotions event just to see where he finishes.
Sure.
But to me, it's like, it doesn't seem like this is the time. If that much money in your bank account and you're 49 years old, I don't see the grind.
Especially with young kids. Kids are growing up. Kids are playing golf. I'm sure he's going to want to be there.
And to me, it's kind of a win-win for LIV, where LIV gets to stand on how serious they're taking relegation. Be like, hey, look, here's a guy that we paid $25 million to join the league. He was in the drop zone. We dropped him. Official World Golf Rankings. We're taking this seriously. And Poulter rides off into the sunset. He made a significant purse in 3 years on LIV.
Yeah.
He's at an age of retirement anyway, and he kind of moves on.
Golden parachute.
It's kind of what it is.
That's kind of what it is. So it's interesting because there are some big names in this drop zone, like Mito Pereira. These guys are big potentials, Even Anthony Kim, he was like a kind of a sensation, never did anything. He's going to be gone. He's in the drop zone. But when you get guys like Westwood, Stenson, I mean, these guys are like, they were superstars in the day. And there's a chance that we might not be able to see them ever play again. It's wild.
Yeah, it is.
It's insane.
And I think one thing that we as fans might be kind of losing out on a little bit is you take a guy like Poulter, 49, he's starting to get to that point where he would be getting up to the age of playing like on the Champions Tour.
Yep.
And I think he would be a type of guy who would be a really good Champions Tour contender. He would be a great personality to bring something to that tour. Mm-hmm. But in a way, because of the way things stand with this current merger not really happening and the continued bans on the PGA Tour and the Champions Tour being a part of that, it almost feels like that's where it is a forced retirement because there's no LIV Champions Tour. Like, where do you go next?
Yeah, where do you go?
Right?
And the confusing thing was, did you see the headline about Chase Koepka recently? I think right here, Chase Captain is set to appear in his first PGA Tour affiliated event since departing LIV. So he's another guy who was relegated out.
Yeah.
He was one of the early guys to play with his brother when the league started. And now I heard there's a chance he's playing on his Corn Ferry Tour event. Are they letting guys back in? Like, I don't know.
It's a great question and what the optics will be for the PGA Tour. I've always said that I think the PGA Tour, once you're no longer playing with LIV, if, as it current stands, not to even say that I agree with suspensions in general, like, because I think all of it hurts golf, all of this, split. But I think that if you're out of LIV, you're no longer playing there, I think it would benefit the PGA Tour to welcome people back. And I understand the reasons and the pushback is that there's a lot of players who don't really love the idea that someone left the league, made a lot of money over there, and then they're allowed to come back. But I think if you earned your way back through Q schools, through things like that,
one-day qualifier,
to a certain extent, I think it's better optics for the PGA Tour to get somebody back playing.
Dude,
and say that, hey, they've returned. But I guess there's a lot of nuances that, like, under what circumstances? Are you playing here because you want to? Or are you playing here because you no longer can hack it at LIV?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, Chase Koepka Monday qualified into a Corn Ferry Tour event. But wouldn't the PGA Tour block a LIV player from even attempting? I mean, they kicked Wesley out for playing in a...
But if he's not a LIV player...
But he was. He left the PGA Tour, went to LIV.
Yeah. But I'm saying is, like, if you were no longer with LIV.
Okay, so if you are, your ties are cut.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you are, then what would... I don't know.
Absolutely.
I think for the PGA Tour, that it would be smarter for them, if you've cut ties with LIV, to give you pathways back and not give it shouldn't be a lifetime ban. That's my opinion anyway. But again, it remains to be seen. But based on performance, I think we got to talk about Ian Poulter, because I think he's in that situation where just in about a month's time, when the season wraps up, we're going to be talking about he's relegated out and what's he going to do. My opinion is I think he uses that as an option to retire. He's made his money. He's clearly, like, at this point, not being competitive as I imagine he'd want him to be. Mm-hmm. But then it could be a huge overhaul for a team like the Majestics if even one more of those guys on the cut line is out. And now even a guy like Henrik Stenson, even being a captain, he is no longer exempt based on that captain status alone to just put himself back on the team. Stenson would have to go through that same kind of, whatever you want to call it, moment where he's got to reflect and say, where do I want my career? Do I want to go try to win my way back, or do I use this as an option to just retire, hang up, and take the money? But either way, it does seem like it's a step in the right direction so long as LIV does hold to this. But in a way, it's kind of also a cut off your nose to spite your face, because now, in order to get those official World Golf rankings, you have to stand on your new relegation rules, and you may have to cut a guy that just 2 years ago you paid $25 million to join the league. But you got to look at that long term. So a lot remains to be seen. Guys, let us know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.